I'm Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, outs, and retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X-books that come out each week.
Now this week, as Secret Wars continues, we're going to be looking at the books that came out on May 13th, 2015. Let's go for it. First up is Magneto number 18, written by Cullen Bunn, drawn by Paul Davidson, and colored by Paul Mounts. This is technically the first part, I believe, of the last days of Magneto, one of several series that's tapering into Secret Wars. And honestly, that's the book's largest liability, because Secret Wars has already started. So Magneto's last-ditch attempt to save the Earth from an incursion is, we know how it's going to end.
Mm-hmm. Now, you can totally do a story like this in a way that's very satisfying. I suspect some other books will be doing exactly that, namely talking about how characters react to the end. But when you have an event that's a foregone conclusion, it doesn't always work out so well to show the character struggling against that event.
Well, again, it can. That Pyrrhic battle against the inevitable can be a really powerful story, but here it's not. This left me a little cold, and it left me a little cold largely because it seems like it's being told as if Secret Wars isn't inevitable. And yeah, I feel like the tone and where it could have gone is kind of lost in that.
Yeah, that said, I'm sure we're being a little harsher on this than we otherwise would, simply because this book has been so consistently strong for almost its entire run. So, by comparison, this looks perhaps weaker than it otherwise would. It is cool seeing Magneto and Polaris again together. Yeah. It's been a long time.
The writing, I think, is strong. It's a good story. It's just a really odd story to be reading right now, and it's a high-stakes story in a situation where the actual stakes are, in fact, really low, which is oddly discordant. You mentioned this had been a superlative series, and a lot of that for me was in the art. If you've been listening, you know there's a new art team this issue, and I was really underwhelmed. I think the line art is solid, if kind of unremarkable. That's Paul Davidson. The colors really, really pulled me out of the story. They are extremely loud, extremely cacophonous, and a really jarring fit for both the art style and the story itself.
That said, there are a number of flashbacks in this book to different parts in Magneto's past where he's interacted with Namor.
Yeah.
And I thought both the penciler and the colors did a very good job of adopting the sort of feel of that era. So on those pages, I think that worked very well.
Yeah, it's a shame that palette couldn't have translated over. I think having a separate one for the flashbacks was less important here than it had been previously. All in all, it's a solid issue. If you've been following the series, there's really no reason to drop it now, but it's not one I'd go out of my way to pick up otherwise.
Next is Storm number 11, written by Greg Pak, with art by Victor Ibanez and Neil Edwards, and colors by Ruth Redmond. And this is a superlative issue. It is also, sadly, the last issue in the series.
But if you're going to go out, this is a note to go out on. I think this is one of the strongest issues of the series, and it's one that calls back very deliberately and very gracefully to a lot of the series' most powerful moments and notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We see a lot of Storm's allies and friends who have been central in the series thus far come back and get involved in this big, great conflict she has against Kenji. And what I like about that conflict is, yes, it's a physical conflict. He's going to, do terrible things to the whole world and such. But really the heart of the conflict, the way he attacks Storm, is by attacking her self-definition, attacking her confidence, attacking the sort of grayness and multifacetedness that makes Storm who she is, that makes Aurora who she is.
And the way that's resolved is lovely, and it also harkens back to, I think, one of Storm's most powerful moments. It may be that a deliberate callback. It may be that this issue is just really fresh in my mind, but the battle against the Beyonder, and specifically against Rachel Summers fighting the Beyonder in X-Men number 203, I feel like there were a lot of notes here that struck very, very similar to that issue.
Yeah, just bringing in the sort of the complex and beautiful nature of a very flawed human race, and having that sort of, not so much love conquers all as complicated stuff that's hard to explain but very important anyways conquers all, being the resolution to everything. I thought that worked very well for this book.
Well, the idea of nuance as a moral resolution. That, the embracing and recognition and acceptance and kind of celebration of that grayness and inconsistency. X-Men 203, the issue I referenced previously, is that on a cosmic scale. And this issue is very personal to Storm, to Kenji, and to the other characters involved.
Well, and to all the people who may or may not die in the world.
Well, and again, I think that speaks to what's been a running strength of Greg Pak's run on this book, which is that it's all about taking someone who is an elemental force and looking at them and letting them exist and be flawed and complicated as a person.
Right, and that's always been, when Storm's written strongly, that's what you do. And I think when you have a series that's about a single character, a focal character, be it this or Cyclops or Magneto or Nightcrawler or whatever, the ones that do and don't work, that's what makes the ones that work. You figure out who that character is, what the core of their personality is, and what the conflicts that'll be based on that core would be, and you run with it. And this book has done that beautifully. I don't know if this book is going to come back after Secret Wars, or if it does, if it'll have even close to the same creative team. If it doesn't, this will have been an amazing work, and if it does, I'm really excited to see what's next.
Next up is Wolverines number 18, written by Ray Fawkes, drawn by Jonathan Marks, and colored by Lee Luffridge. It's there.
Yeah, well, it's a fun issue. It's weird. It's very much like a fighty fight, everything is dire issue. I do think it at least gets across how climactic things are finally getting. All the pieces of the plot are finally coming together, and so we have this glorious, horrifying bloodbath that really has been inevitable since very early on in the series.
This doesn't feel like a climax to me. This feels like a drawn-out extension to an already drawn-out battle that I was already getting kind of bored with. It's okay for what it is, but again, this is a series whose pacing has been kind of all over the place, and this is one of the places where I think it's fallen flattest. It's not bad. I mean, the art's nice, the storytelling is good, it's got really interesting character moments. It is fiercely brutal, and I think a fight that a lot of people have been waiting for since the beginning of this series. But as a comic, as a narrative piece, it kind of left me cold.
Right. I mean, a lot of series, they talk about them living and dying by the trade, that's sort of the definitive way to read a series, and that'll be the way to experience it at its best. With this, I don't know if you can really say that about it, because the whole concept was it's been a weekly book. I kind of feel like that's how it should work if it's going to, and it does sometimes, but not all the time.
Right. It feels rushed when it's not at its best, and this is an issue like that. There's not enough story to sustain the length of the book. And there's not enough story to sustain the art or, the attempts to make it climactic. I want this to be better than it is. I know this series can be better than this, and I really hope it goes out on a better note.
Next is Uncanny Avengers number 4, written by Rick Remender and Jerry Duggan, with art by Daniel Acuna. So it turns out this is issue number 4 of 5 of this series, apparently ever.
Thank God.
I really wanted to like Uncanny Avengers. I thought it had a strong start. I thought the previous volume had a lot of good stuff in it. The problem is, this could kind of work as a chapter to a larger story if it were a little less decompressed, if it were more, I guess, punchier, and not punchier, but story punchier. But as it is, what we have here is a plot line where not a whole lot happens, and that's going to have been the entire series. Ostensibly, it's about Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch trying to figure out their origin, and we get some of that. But really, it's the other characters seem to be just sort of spinning their wheels.
Now, I should point out that when we say not a lot happens, we're not just talking about not a lot of punching and action. There's just not much there, period. We've been thrown into what's supposed to feel like a high-stakes kind of world-spanning plot, and it really doesn't. What it feels like is a series that kind of got thrown together to justify changing the origins of 2 characters who appear in a movie.
It kind of does. I mean, that said, there is some good stuff. I mean, there's a bit about Sabretooth kind of responding to his role as Wolverine's successor to a degree that I think works really well.
Yeah.
A lot of the art's really good. The colors especially, I love. I love that all the colors are really intense. Everyone has their sort of own color scheme, and it's really grating in a good way, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Yeah, no, Acuna's palette is really intense and really saturated, and I think that's something that's fallen largely out of style recently, and I really enjoy seeing it come back here.
Yeah, for a book that's sort of as high stakes, high emotion, high action as this one attempts to be, and sometimes is, I think that's beautiful and perfect. But, I mean, we have a lot of stuff that's happening that just doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere. Like, Brother Voodoo has been basically trying to cast a spell for the whole series so far.
One spell.
And that's about it. There's some stuff with the Vision meeting his sort of equal opposite as this mate and partner that could be brilliant and fascinating, and we just don't get to see enough of it because there's so much else going on.
Y'all, you made robot sex boring.
I'm just saying, yeah.
What?
But, I think there's something to be said for the premise of Uncanny Avengers.
Sorry, that should have been android sex.
Well, true. Part X-Men, part Avengers team. That's a cool concept. It could work really well. It often did in the previous volume. But I don't think that's what this book is here.
No.
Remender's done some great work. I don't personally think that this is it.
This series is a workhorse. It's there to get a very specific set of characters from a very specific point A to a very specific point B, and I guess it does that. So, good enough. Finally, we have the big one, Secret Wars number 2, written by Jonathan Hickman, art by Asad Ribic, and colors by Yvette Sforcina. Man, this series is kind of discombobulating me because it's so good.
It's so good, guys!
And it's not just good compared to my expectations. Like, I went in really cynical about this, and so I feel like it could have been, minimally decent, and I still would have been positively impressed. This is amazing.
I was legitimately excited on, like, every page.
This is defending, this is justifying world-spanning cataclysmic crossovers in ways that I really didn't expect it to. And it reminds me, honestly, more than anything else, of everything that worked about Age of Apocalypse. I think I mentioned this last week as well, but the sense of being thrown headfirst into a new, entirely unfamiliar world, which we very, very much are this week, as we get our first glimpses of Battleworld in this issue. And just having to learn as you go along. There's a little bit of framing and for explanation in this issue, but for the most part, you just got to run with it. And it's so clever. Asad Ribic is a phenomenal artist. I don't know when he started, but we both first got introduced to him in his run on Thor, which was really beautiful. And he is especially phenomenal at drawing combat.
And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of action.
There is, and it's interesting, and it's clever, and the writing's really good, and the characters are fascinating, and I care about Battleworld. I was not expecting to come out of this caring about Battleworld. Like, I thought it was going to be fun and cool, and I was going to, mostly into it for, like, the one-off little worlds. No, I am actually actively invested in Secret Wars now. Well, what have you done?
You mentioned the framing story is brief but is good. But okay, guys, so the framing story, we knew that there was a book called Thors, which was like a bunch of different versions of Thor from different alternate realities who are basically cops of Battleworld. We didn't know how awesome that was going to be. So
we could have expected, I think.
Dr. Doom is God. Let's just get that out of the way. He is God in this world.
In a kind of amazing callback to the first Secret Wars series.
Yeah, and the Thors are the enforcers of the word of doom, and they're just going around to all these different kingdoms, which are alternate realities, just, being awesome and crack-a-dooming everywhere, and it opens up with, like, this one dude becoming a new Thor by lifting the hammer to prove himself worthy. Everything... Okay, so people overuse the word epic a lot. I get that. People overuse the word awesome a lot. This miniseries is why those words exist.
I mean, epic, I think its length and its format speaks to that. I will genuinely... There was some genuine awe going on. This is solid. It is smart. It's really well written. It's remarkably accessible.
Yeah,
and
as opposed to the first issue.
I'm actually gonna say, I would probably recommend jumping in with Secret Wars 2 over Secret Wars 1. It is a terrific, especially if you're mostly planning to dive into the Battleworld stuff, it's a terrific introduction to the universe. It's a very well-told, very compelling story. As Miles mentioned, this is a universe that's created around Dr. Doom, of which he is the omnipotent ruler. And, there is so much to work with. And Hickman works with so much of it so well. We recommend the hell out of this. Whether or not you're planning to go further into Secret Wars, the core book is so far 2 for 2.
Yes. Oh, and also, if you're going to read other books that are not X-Men, apparently based on this, you should read Thor's. Because goddamn, guys, Thor's.
All right, so after that last review, I don't think there's probably going to be much question about what our issue of the week is.
Yeah, on a normal week, that would have been absolutely Storm number 11. It was a phenomenal issue, thematically perfect, very well done, a good story that, along with its previous issues, stands alone as a complete unit. But then there was Secret Wars number 2. And I don't know the last time I've been this excited about a big summer event that is clearly mainly designed to make money. It's incredibly cool, and just I felt like I was at the heyday of my fanboy days all over again. This book is great. What about our panel of the week?
Well, I think, again, unsurprisingly, that panel of the week is likewise from Secret Wars number 2, and it is from one of those Asad Ribic beautiful, beautiful fight scenes. This is a duel between 2 possibly recognizable characters. I will say right now that this is not the end of the duel. And so the thing about drawing action panels is that it's really easy to leave them looking static. And there are a lot of ways around that. But the most important one is choosing the precise right moment that just on its own implies the entire rest of the motion, the rest of the climax. This panel does that beautifully, and it's also just exquisitely good punctuation to the scenes, the panels that immediately precede it. It's a full stop. And when you're reading through it, it hits with the same kind of force that the blow it's portraying does.
So that's it for this time. Thanks for watching.
If you like what you've seen here, please check out our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up every Sunday at rachelandmiles.com, also on iTunes and Stitcher. And what have we got for them this week, Miles?
So this time we're going to be finishing up the initial run by Bob Layton of X Factor, just a few issues, very short. We get to see Beast turn into a less furry form for a while, a lot of Shirtless Angel, some very strange USSR adventures, and a series that will soon get much better than it is in the issues we're talking about.
That podcast, these video reviews, and everything else on rachelandmiles.com, including X-Men Evolution recaps, essays, art, and much, much more, are brought to you by our very cool Patreon subscribers. They make all of this possible, and if you would like to join them in doing so, you can do that at the link right below and help us work towards some very cool milestone goals. I think the next one up is an entire revamp of the website, including mobile optimization.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we will see you next time, along with like 4,500 Thors, ideally.
The low evolutionary is not, I guess.
He's Solid Snake.
God damn, he kind of is.
Yep.
Is he, though?
Yes. He's part of the Super Baby Project.
You're part of the Super Baby Project?
Tell me more about how I'm a super baby.
Absolutely not.
Oh.
I'm going to call your mom for that one.